The prevention is usually the cure. My name is Michael Falk with Kinetic Sports Medicine and Performance, and today I want to talk about this idea of injury prevention. And while we can never prevent all injuries, sports inherently are going to have a risk of injury associated with them. Pulling a muscle, having a knee injury, rolling an ankle, it's just the nature of playing sports. But we can do many things to reduce the likelihood of injuries. And one of the things that we see is that usually the thing that we use to treat the injury and the thing that we use to try to prevent or reduce the risk of the injury are very, very similar and often kind of the same course of action. And so when we meet with families and start talking through these things, we are often educating on both how we're going to recover from this injury and then how we're going to turn that into a prevention program going forward to try to have a maintenance plan so that athletes can stay on the field for the long run. And so some examples of this are going to be looking at hamstring strains, which are very common in many field sport athletes. And one of the key things in any hamstring or muscle strain injury is incorporating a sprinting program. And not just sprinting like conditioning, running a lot at the end of practice, but really full on, all out, running as fast as that athlete can, even for short distances, are incredibly important in a hamstring strain rehab program before they go back onto the field. But then in prevention, having a regular dose of high speed, maximal effort running in their daily or weekly routine at practice, and again, not kind of fatigued sort of 90% effort, but really opening it up even for 10, 15, 20 yards frequently is going to be key to try to reduce your risk of going through hamstring strain. So that's just one area that the prevention and the cure are often the same thing. If we look at general fitness athletes and we start talking about overhead pressing and having painful overhead pressing, one of the things that we're going to look at to try to treat that is how is your full range of motion going overhead? Are we able to get your shoulder blades all the way upright? Are we able to control your spinal position, keep your core tight going overhead into that? And often that's painful in people that have pain when they press overhead. And so restoring that range of motion, restoring that ability to get into those overhead positions is going to be a key part of those rehab programs. By the same token, when we start seeing athletes from the gym that are having pain or that want to not have pain while they're pressing overhead, the thing that we want to look at is how do we prepare the body in a warm-up typically to get the shoulder in that overhead position. So how do we gain the mobility to get over there? How do we get the scapular control to get overhead? And how are we preparing your core to maintain its stiffness as we go overhead? So another illustration that this concept, that the prevention and the cure are often very similar. So as you start looking at how do you reduce injury risk or how do you treat a specific injury, often those are going to have very similar concepts. They might be scaled slightly differently, different levels, but the principles of those two things are often going to coincide. And so when you finish a rehab program for a specific injury, it's often very important to not stop what you were doing, but to figure out which one of those things that was in that rehab program are going to be important to maintain as you go forward so that you don't have this injury recur again in the future and that you can stay on the field for the long run. So hopefully this is a concept that's really helpful to you, to whether you're recovering from an injury or whether you just want to stay healthy, that you can incorporate these principles so that you're able to keep doing the sports and activities that you love.